Hi, I'm Daniel Landstandig, and this is Innovation 19. Welcome to Innovation 19, our new exactly 19-minute podcast on innovation, entrepreneurship, ideas, and insights that can transform our future. We believe that innovation is a mindset, not a momentary behavior, and this podcast is all about inspiring and igniting the passion and creativity of leaders and changemakers like you. In this episode, we're talking about the show that everyone is talking about.
The songs of eons past tell of battles between Mandalore the Great and an order of sorcerers called Jedi.
You expect me to search the galaxy and deliver this creature to a race of enemy sorcerers?
This is the way.
That's right. This episode is all about The Mandalorian.
Warning! Very nerdy is this podcast episode.
Just as the world was starting to run out of shows to binge because of how COVID-19 brought Hollywood to a standstill, Season 2 of The Mandalorian was announced. I got pretty excited, not just as a Star Wars fan, but as a tech fan, because it turns out that the Mandalorian team is not just exceptional at making a cool Baby Yoda puppet, but they're also on the forefront of production innovation. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and answer some questions. First, how did The Mandalorian fast-track production to get ahead of the curve in the middle of a pandemic? Also, what can other shows learn from The Mandalorian's production methodology? And what does it all mean for the future of television and the binge-watching culture? But first, in case you've been living under a rock and you love spoilers, here's a little about the show. The Mandalorian is a TV series that was released on Disney Plus in 2019. Season 2 premieres this week, October 30th. It's the story of a bounty hunter on a quest to deliver a valuable alien child, the now iconic Baby Yoda that you've probably seen all over the internet in various memes. Now, the concept may be straightforward, but the execution has received praise for everything from the writing to directing to the musical score. But it was the innovative approach to special effects and the production part of it that really captured my curiosity. The Star Wars franchise is no stranger to innovation, of course. The first 3 movies showcased some of the most impressive practical effects ever, helping to pioneer a new mode of visual storytelling. And the 3 movies that followed also used a lot of technical innovation, although some of those CGI attempts ended up doing more harm than good, like Jar Jar Binks, anybody? But now, The Mandalorian is becoming a pioneer of its own. In The Mandalorian, you're going to see travel to different planets, spaceships, characters who are basically leaping from one epic backdrop to the next. And the way Hollywood normally tackles this kind of production is by traveling to faraway places and shooting on location. Like the first Star Wars movie was shot on location in North Africa. Filmmakers also use something called chroma key compositing. In layman's terms, green screens, like your local weather forecaster. Green screen has been around for decades. Walt Disney himself did a version of it to combine animated and human characters in the 1920s. But what we don't often realize is that green screen technology actually comes with some annoying limitations. The obvious one is that the characters are limited in what they can wear. If you wear green, for example, your body parts are going to start to disappear in front of a green screen. But other issues include a static feel to the background, and you can especially feel the green screen background in epic movies from the late 90s or the early 2000s. Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, or Lord of the Rings. Fellowship of the Ring used a lot of green screen tech. And then there's the long post-production process too. Every time they use green screen, the production process is extremely costly and time-consuming. That's why the team behind The Mandalorian decided to go a different route. The Mandalorian is largely created with something called real-time production. It's a kind of relatively new approach to filmmaking, and it means that a show's post-production is done in real time rather than after production like it normally is. So instead of just relying on real locations or a green screen, over half of The Mandalorian's first season was filmed with real-time production using StageCraft. StageCraft is a proprietary technology that has the actors performing in front of this 20-foot-high 270-degree semicircular LED video wall and ceiling with a 75-foot diameter performance space. So they're basically inside a really huge jumbotron. And basically, this means that the actors and filmmakers could interact with background images. The set could be visually transported anywhere that could be rendered in the Unreal video game engine, which means that they could basically go anywhere. And because the backgrounds are moving and they're following a program, they can actually adjust to the movements of the camera in real time or even the movements of the actors. So no more static background shots. For example, when you see a forest planet in episode 4 of the first season of The Mandalorian, we, the viewers, see characters surrounded by swampland and trees. Well, instead of having the actors and crew pretend like something fantastical is happening on a flat green screen behind them, everyone on set was actually seeing those trees in a 360-degree immersive environment with lighting and everything. Pretty cool. Really, because we haven't had the computer power necessary to render realistic 3D environments like this in real time until really recently. But now we have larger screens, faster computers, possibilities to do this type of real-time production are quickly becoming limitless. You gotta believe this is helpful to the actors, but there are benefits to the costume department as well, because the shiny metallic outfit that Mando wears is fairly central to the story, considering his armor represents his honor and his loyalty to the people. Well, that armor would not be possible if we just used green screen tech, because the reflective surfaces would act as sort of like a disco ball. They'd bounce light off the green screens, the shots would be unusable, but with LED screens of real-time production, nobody has to worry about reflections. So it's an exciting step forward for all of the creatives involved with the TV and filmmaking process. Jon Favreau, the creator of The Mandalorian, talks about how he took the green screen lessons he learned on the innovative movie The Jungle Book and applied them to The Mandalorian.
And now instead of having a green screen that you have to move around in light, which took forever, and that was really the frustration that led to these innovations, which was how could we do that without green screens next time? And so that led to, you have a green stage, you have pre-lit green areas that you could expose, and then it turned into these video walls where you could have green just behind the actor, and then interactive light, which we used on Jungle Book also for shadows and things on the characters. We took all the technology that I've been messing around with from all those other projects and applying it to a very specific application that would work for this.
The technology is undeniably compelling. But did it help to get this done during the pandemic? Totally. If you compare the huge number of stages that Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker had to retain in order to shoot that 2.5-hour movie with the 3 stages and a backlot that The Mandalorian used, you can start to see how efficient the real-time production process can be. And instead of taking an entire crew to a new location, because virtually nobody could travel, The Mandalorian simply sent a few photographers to get footage from places like Iceland, Chile, and Death Valley. That footage was then shared with the director, who was able to select the best shots and project them onto the LED screens on set. And meanwhile, the actors and directors never left Manhattan Beach for the entire first season. And for my nerdy media friends who are also financially inclined, in case you're keeping track, that is a lot of cash saved on travel and production time, not to mention controlling the environment for weather, lighting, and other unknown variables that come with travel and can delay production. So this means that The Mandalorian's $100 million first season budget could instead be used to make the show look awesome. If The Mandalorian had relied on less innovative techniques, production definitely would have taken longer. It would have inevitably overlapped with COVID shutdowns. We probably would not have had Season 2 premiere for a while now. So aside from saving money and outrunning a global pandemic, why would other TV shows want to produce using this method? 2 words: binge culture. We are just hooked on TV shows now. We watch whole seasons at a time. From a tech perspective, TV binge culture began less than a decade ago. We can actually pinpoint it. It happened in Q3 of 2011. That's where 3 award-winning and popular dramas were all released on Netflix at the same time: Mad Men, Breaking Bad, and The Walking Dead, which is still on the air today. And in the past, watching an entire TV show, of course, meant that you'd have to schedule it and catch it every week, or you'd record it on your DVR or rent DVDs. But Netflix streaming has made it now so you can sit back, relax, and spend your entire weekend watching a full season of your favorite show. In August of 2012, Netflix added a post-play feature. You've seen this for sure 1,000 times now. This is the automatic playing of subsequent episodes. So if you're watching a series, as soon as the credits start to roll, it starts to count down the next episode. And with Netflix making the decision for you to just go from one episode to the next, it becomes very easy to just say, okay, one more episode. And before you know it, it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you've just finished several seasons of your favorite show. But Amazon Prime does this, Hulu does this. Everyone has become really smart about keeping you from one episode or one piece of content right into the next. Now, there are dozens of streaming platforms available. The average American is streaming 8 hours of content per day. Some of that is consumed as audio, some video, but the bottom line is this. The studios need cheaper and faster ways to keep that content flowing. In 2018, Netflix users streamed 52 billion minutes of just the TV comedy The Office. 2019, Netflix released 371 new TV shows and movies. That was a 50% increase from 2018. Disney Plus revealed that they now have 60.5 million paying subscribers, 60.5 million, and they hit their 5-year subscriber goal in just 8 months of operation. In fact, a Bank of America analyst recently said that The Mandalorian is hugely popular and a critical show for Disney because it is driving subscribers to Disney Plus. I know that for a lot of my friends, The Mandalorian is the reason they signed up for Disney Plus to begin with. They didn't know if it was a new show that would be any good, but they figured that $6.99 a month was worth the chance to inhale the next installment of the Star Wars franchise.
I like those odds.
The truth is, the binge culture isn't going anywhere. If anything, it's going to get more extreme, and it's going to get harder and more costly for streaming services to keep up with the demand for new content. The real-time production approach to The Mandalorian could be a really good solution to the problem of the cost management of creating all this new content. If you shoot a show on a soundstage, as opposed to moving an entire crew to on-location shoot after on-location shoot, you might save time, money, and, in the area of COVID, potential exposure to illness. But even cooler than that, it's just a better production methodology. And now with StageCraft's real-time tech, you don't have to sacrifice the visual quality of your show. Now, the LED screens are a big initial investment. The full industrial light and magic StageCraft setup is bespoke, and it can cost millions of dollars to set up. So if you're a crime drama, you're probably not going to buy into the cost of using the LED screens because grand locations are not a driving force of the narrative. But if you're a big budget sci-fi or a fantasy series, that initial cost could justify itself in one production. And there are actually less sophisticated, smaller scale versions of the tech that are coming out as soon as fall of 2020, which is really cool because that enables an entirely new part of the film and production industry to embrace this type of technology. One of those technologies is the ARFX home studio from ARWall. It only costs about $9,500 for a setup that basically gets you started to attach your camera, use some camera tracking, and to use their software to create at least good close-ups and medium shots with this same type of approach that The Mandalorian used. Now, hopefully this doesn't create a scenario where everybody gives up on location shooting, because there is something really special about that. And if the actors and directors never leave a soundstage, you have to wonder if we're ultimately going to lose some of that special something that might come from actually being transported to a new physical location. But I think the answer here is probably the same as before. It all kind of depends on the show you're shooting. If you're creating a fantasy landscape, as in The Mandalorian, then the locations aren't technically real anyway. But popular shows like Emily in Paris, where Paris becomes a character of its own, would the show lose something if it were shot on a soundstage instead of Paris itself? Yeah, probably so. Plus, there's the local economic impact too, or the tax economics. Think about this. A lot of shows are shooting on location in places like Atlanta, New Mexico, and even Budapest because of the tax breaks. What would happen in markets like this or Vancouver if now you're taking business out of real locations and into sound stages? That's why there's probably not a one-size-fits-all solution to production challenges, but look, filmmakers are going to have more opportunities and more possibilities now to create their content. And in the case of The Mandalorian, they had the money and the genre that justified production innovation, which resulted in a really awesome and exciting filmmaking and viewing experience. But even if you have all the money in the world at your disposal, innovation for innovation's sake is never the answer.
The shadow of greed, that is.
It just feels like truly innovative creators know that pushing the envelope without good reason can lead to disaster. Like, think of any movie that used early CGI just to wow viewers. The cool tech just became really out of date, and what seemed like it was innovative at the time looked fake or silly, just a few years later. That's part of why I think The Mandalorian touched our hearts, because they used advanced tech for production, they made it part of the story, they used animatronics and puppetry to create Baby Yoda, which is not new tech, but it is fascinating to watch. Yoda is actually a great case study of the evolution of technology over the course of the Star Wars franchise. Because, Yoda started his journey in Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, as a practical, as in like all physical and zero technology puppet that was voiced and mostly puppeteered by Frank Oz. You may recognize Frank Oz as the voice of Miss Piggy from the Muppets, or Gonzo. He was the guy responsible for creating that recognizable Yoda style of speech, where sentences are organized in the order of object, subject, verb. Did I get that right?
When 900 years old you reach, look as good you will not.
Basically, the simple Yoda puppet from the original trilogy is the Yoda that everybody fell in love with. But by the time we got to Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, things got a little complicated with our little Jedi Master. The team made the mistake of updating Yoda, and they resculpted the puppet into a different, heavier material. And that material was more transparent than the original Yoda, so light on the set interacted with him differently and turned him into a different shade of green, and it was a disaster. If you YouTube the 1999 version of Yoda, you might actually cry out in horror of the creepiness of Yoda. But perhaps because of the way the new puppet looked, or simply because George Lucas can just never help himself with going back and making alterations to the Star Wars movies as soon as a new form of technology comes along, in 2011, he ended up retroactively replacing the 1999 Phantom Menace puppet with a CGI version of Yoda. And now today in The Mandalorian, the Baby Yoda puppet is a $5 million work of art. This $5 million puppet requires 2 technicians to operate it, one for the eyes and mouth, the other for the facial expressions, and it is really amazing what they can do. Now listen, filmmakers from 50 years ago would probably be surprised if they knew that one of the most technologically advanced shows of 2020, one of the biggest hits of this year, no doubt, was still using puppetry. Jim Henson would be thrilled. But Baby Yoda just wouldn't be Baby Yoda if he were completely computer generated. Go back to 1999, watch YouTube, tell me I'm wrong about this. Okay, this has been an extremely unapologetically nerdy edition of Innovation 19. I'm off to watch the first episode of Season 2, and then I'll probably watch Season 1 all over again over this weekend. And you'll be happy to hear that the pre-production for Season 3 of The Mandalorian already allegedly began in April 2020. So keep calm and binge on.
I have spoken.
Thanks to Futuri's Post System, software to help podcasters produce, publish, and measure podcasts, on-demand audio, and audiograms. More information at futurimedia.com.
Innovation 19 this has been. The host is Anstandig Daniel. Zena Burns is the epic producer in charge. Sonic branding by Real World.